Well, I think we're ready to start the final session of today. I guess one of the challenges of an international conference during an international football festival is that you do occasionally lose some of your crowd. So maybe because England playing. By the way, anyone who is looking forward to watching the England game, we will be finished by 4:30 to get plenty of time. And there are pubs that we can show you to if you want to watch it near here before travelling home. But let's focus on market research for the next hour. I'm really looking forward to this. This session is really about reflecting on some of the topics that we've heard over the last couple of days, but really then to project that on where we think transformation is going and get some very expert opinions on that topic. I will introduce the panel to you. For those that you don't know them, I'll do them in the right order. So on the far left is Owen, who is a digital and a technology entrepreneur and is CEO and co-founder of Measure Protocol, an ethical and transparent person-based marketplace. And to his right is Carlsson, who is founder of Milo Advisory and is a marketing and research tech expert, investor, advisor, mentor, and board member, and spent 23 years since leaving as Chief Innovation Officer. Next to him probably needs no introduction, as he's already spoken at the conference, but we have Jon Pulseton, who is VP of Innovation at Kantar. He is Master of Experiments and a very regular conference speaker. And to my left is Shifra, who is CEO and founder of Ayda, a research operations platform that puts the participants' experience first. And we're very, very lucky to have them all with us today. We're all friends here, and it's a relatively small group. So obviously, most of the talking will be done by us. But if you have points to make or want to chirp in, please do. Yeah, either put your hand up or start talking, and we'll get a mic to you. Don't wait until the end. I think if you've got something you really want to say very relevant, then just join us in that discussion. Okay. So this whole conference, when we thought about, I suppose, 18 months ago, 12 months ago, that's when we started about what this conference was going to be about. One of the words that kind of quickly came out was transformation, because people like me that have been around for a long time, kind of have seen a lot of transformation. And as a technologist, it's been a very interesting journey that I've witnessed about how the rise of technology and methodologies and science, but technology has changed over 27, 28 years that I've been in the industry. And I came to the ASC International Conference in 1996 at Imperial, and it was a very, very different agenda to what it is today. And I would like to start by understanding it's kind of what I call from basement to boardroom. The tech roles, that the ops and the tech people used to sort of be underground within research agencies, and their opinions didn't necessarily feed into strategy. Really, I think that's changed, and I'd like to kind of explore whether or not that is going to continue, and how it's going to look with regards to the structure of industry and the role for technology. So maybe if I start with Oscar, how do you think that that technology is going to continue, and do you believe it will be the key driver of our industry, our market research industry going forward?
Let's see if this works. I think so. I think technology will continue to change and drive the industry, and we see AI now, and that's been the main topic of this conference. Even though I haven't been to all the sessions, I've seen the topics of the sessions. So definitely, it will change a lot foundationally on how we operate. It might not go and disrupt everything, like some people are talking about, that market research won't be needed or panels won't be needed. I don't think that will happen, but it will drive a lot of efficiency, which will disrupt organizations, how companies are structured, what we focus our time on, and how we can deliver to customers. So definitely that will change a lot, and I think that will also bring more funding into the industry, which I think is a positive thing, because it brings a lot of talent into the industry as well that wouldn't find the market research industry otherwise. So I really think that will continue to happen, but it will probably be different shape from what we've seen in the last 10 years or so.
Okay. Who else would like to talk about how they see that technology is going to continue? Will it run our world? Will a technologist be the CEO?
I'll happily jump in. I think I've been to the ASC for about the last 6 years, and about 6 years ago I said I'm an interloper. I still call myself an interloper. I'm not a researcher. I run a technology company. I happen to have a lot of good research and analysts and data scientists that work in the company to keep me honest. But I think Oscar's right. I think providing the challenge is that there's two things happening here. One is that technology is making efficiencies. It's not always making the right decisions though. So it needs smart, well-grounded, good people with good experience and backgrounds to be able to build out the methodologies. And yes, you can do some of that with AI. If you ask ChatGPT for a methodology, it will just spit you one out. It will spit out something that's been created by a human over the last 20 years, and it will probably give you some derivatives of how you can maybe change that as well. But the weird thing is, even as a technologist, you still have to build that. And that is the distinction between, I think, of where technology, the fact that humans at least need to input into this kind of paradigm that we're in right now to be able to guide that technology. So our data scientist feeds our product team, which feeds our engineering team, our data engineering team, so that can then deliver something for a client. It doesn't stop the fact that having smart people to think of new creative ways to define or to think about the answer to a problem that a client might have. It just might get there a bit quicker than we have done in the past. So I think I would agree with Oscar. I just don't think it's the end of humankind right now. I'm not quite Sam on that. Everyone knows who Sam is.
I see a counterpoint to that in terms of a lot of investment and money coming into this sector, and I wonder at the same time, how much is hype in terms of some of that investment money, and how much is actually really moving the sector forward, and actually is grounded in really doing better research, delivering better results, and how much is that sort of last mile delivery, where we sort of saw a boom in investment in sort of those last mile delivery firms like Deliveroo and Gorilla, etc., and then a complete bust as well in that, because that's very much a sort of VCs often, not all, right, but there is a bit of a hype cycle there as well, and I'm mindful and cognizant of that coming into a sector that kind of has not really seen too much of that today and what impact that will have.
So why do we think VC and even PE are focusing on our space?
But because I think there is huge opportunity in terms of making money. that's really their driver, right? Over and above whether it delivers better. I mean that's maybe a bit taking it down to its very basis level. But I think there are different drivers at play in terms of what VC and PE comes in. I'm not just saying they're all bad. It's not that. It's not that black and white. But I think the drivers with VC and PE is they see data, they see opportunity, they see processes that can ripe for transformation. An industry that's kind of ripe for transformation, but it's therefore what happens and where that money goes to deliver positive transformation. I think that's as opposed to, like I said, hype cycle, which I don't know if you've seen Mark Ritson Mark Whitson's article the other day about Evidentia, an investment company that he's invested in terms of synthetic respondents and the hype around that, and you can imagine so much money then coming in, and yet, you know, from some of the things that we saw today and that you were talking about as well, we're not there yet. From Colin's work, you know, it's hang on a minute, you know, and then where does that take us? And I'm not saying it's bad or it's wrong. It's just a different set of priorities.
I mean, I do find it quite crazy sometimes, the kind of levels of multiples when you talk about something with potential in an area that is deemed sexy versus something that is matured and running really well and struggles to really be valued at anything. But I guess, the money people are speculators, I suppose.
Right, exactly that.
So before I cover, John, you work for Kantar, a company that I'm sure is trying to make good use of efficiencies and technologies. Dangers?
I've never been more excited in my entire career about the opportunities in front of us. I mean, I just feel like it's boundless. I feel like we just discovered America. I feel like there are so many expanding opportunities with technology right now, but I don't know that we know how to process or handle them, where they're going to go. It's going to take tremendous skill. There's going to be loads of people who are going to get their fingers burned. And I think that the way that you see innovation occurring, obviously the bigger companies have a much more of a struggle to bet on innovation in a way that smaller companies can bet on, and they can survive or not. Whether the evolutionary process involved in putting up all your hat in one, or eggs in one basket. You set up a business and it will work or it won't, and some will grow and some will become massive. Within a larger research organisation, you have to be a lot more measured. You can't just bet on everything. You have to almost talent spot emerging opportunities, collaborate. You have to be able to then buy the things you really think it's more of a buying game at our end of the market, I suspect, than pure innovation, and in a way that taking immediate advantage of some of the things that are emerging right now. But I mean, it's almost impossible to speculate what the future's going to be like, because there's just so many things.
But how do you, someone has to make those choices. Who are the right people to make those choices? And is it safe bets, a few safe bets or a couple of risks? How do you do your innovation portfolio?
Well, I mean, that's up to the individual. Some people get it. Again, it's a talent that you have to do that, the spot, the skills you invest in. An organisation has the skills to be able to do that or not. Market forces will determine who does that well and who doesn't do it well. I don't know if I can speak to a technique then.
I think there's, so I agree with John wholeheartedly in terms of the fact that it's just wild. I get to work every day at this moment. I'm like a kid in the candy shop. It's like, what do we do now? Can we do that thing or this thing? There is just one comment that you made though, AJ, which is, I think you have to just make sure that it's really clear, is that actually the amount of investment into our industry is tiny, in the grand scheme of things. Tiny, like ridiculous. And so I unfortunately have raised a good amount of money from venture capital. And if you walk into a room and you say you're a market research company, a VC world, they usually try and bolt the door from the inside so you can't get in, because they've seen a lot of things go wrong and fail, and because they think everything is Kantar, and I mean that in the nicest possible way. Is that so I don't mean that disparagingly about Kantar. Is that they expect it to be enormous amount of people. That's what VCs now think is the market research world. It has to be tens of thousands of people and no tech. And of course, that's not what Kantar is. And to John's point, having I guess from a Kantar perspective, having the ability to acquire things that make sense to grow that business. But that's what the VCs have in their heads. However, if you just switch that just slightly to what probably most of the people in the room think that they are, is that they do good research with good outputs we're probably relying on data. So if you walk into that same room and you say you're a data-driven company, oh, welcome. Let me just get out the coffee and the champagne, sit for another half an hour. It's a very different conversation. So, and I think that's just an evolution of where we've come from. Is that the word research, unfortunately, isn't as well liked by the venture capital and the private equity community play at the other end of that market. And actually, there is good money in the PE world in research, but they're looking for different things. So I think it's just worth. If you're an automated car, if you know how to mine lithium, if you can build an electric engine with less lithium than anyone else, you will get money thrown at you, hundreds of millions and billions of dollars. If you're a research company, you will not. If you're a data company that has the ability to connect what the old world looked like, and I'm sort of making a distinction between the old world as in asking someone a survey and then getting an answer that you can give back to a client very simply, which is clearly not the world that we're in. But if you can use data and technology to do that, then there's money to be had. But it is still a fraction of the world in terms of the VC community.
Do you think, so if we can't necessarily predict what technologies or applications of technology might be innovative and successful in the next few years, where do we think they might come from? Are they likely to be coming out of the bigger agencies? Are they likely to be coming out of individuals who've worked in the industry who suddenly see potential and get funding or have the money to do it? Or are they going to come from left field? They're going to come from other industries, other people who see us as an opportunity?
So I can take a stab at that one. No, I really think, to your point, Owen, the research industry is undervalued, even though we generate so much data that we base multi-billion-dollar decisions on. So the extension of the research industry or insights industry is huge. And if you include those companies that are playing in that world or outside the research industry, they, in our cases, they don't realize that they're research companies. They generate data, and I think a lot of them will probably move closer and closer to the research industry as well, and work closer with us. So probably a lot of innovations are coming from that side, entering into the research industry, or that line will be more and more blurred, and brands, boardrooms will work with data companies to get faster insights. They will probably ask questions more often. Right now, I think there's a challenge for the research industry because it's seen as a bit cumbersome and slow to actually get high quality data output. But I think there's a huge opportunity to deliver some data quicker and then validate that and take proper time and proper research knowledge to do that. So with that, I think it's going to be a combination, but a lot of the TAM of our industry will constantly grow, which is a good thing for an industry, which will include more companies and a lot of innovations.
Okay. John, where does the insights person sit in all this change?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the insight person probably has to be a bit more agile and needs to have a look on what they might think about what their job involves. I do think that the steering of all this information coming through and these new techniques and approaches do require a lot of thinking about and interpretation. Frank's presentation earlier highlighted how important the human being is involved in wrestling through the application of some extremely high technology, and quite advanced methodological techniques requires advanced thinking about, and so I think it's an evolving role, requires a lot more information, a lot more thought perhaps about actually what problems you're trying to solve, and you're making decisions about techniques, perhaps more functional things about the insight person if you think more broadly about an insight person in an agency like ours, I do fear some of that is becoming functionalized and automated, and I rail against that a little bit. I think if you think macroeconomically, we've got technological improvements, making everything a bit faster and turning around and standardising things. I feel that's like homogenised the insights industry, and it's not, I don't think it's particularly positive. But then you think on the fringes of that, all the really creative new ways of analysing data, the new techniques that are emerging, those require new forms of insight management, and there's new jobs emerging in that tier, which probably will replace the lost role of someone to analyse a survey and produce a PowerPoint presentation.
Okay. Do you think that the insights person, because if you're making things more efficient, productizing them, feels like you need the insights expertise when you design those products, those innovations, those technologies? Do you feel that the expert is being involved in those designs, or is it being designed by tech people?
I don't know, but I mean, same brain involved in analysing a survey could be involved in future in really writing thoughtful prompt.
Yeah.
It's a brain requirement, and those sort of, I think the human beings just going to be a meta person sitting on top of a whole load of problems and working out the gaps between what a computer can solve and what I need to, I think it's really hard to speculate.
The only thing I think for me, transformation is a good thing. I welcome change, and I know that's kind of scary sometimes, but I don't welcome change in my family life. My children would pay to that. But I think transformation is a great thing. If you think about what a marketeer did 20 years ago, and my past is advertising and ad tech, and the marketeer's role is, it is night and day different now. Most marketeers have to have some understanding of data now, because it's not just about I make a nice creative ad. I have to know that it works now, because the CEO or the CFO is expecting an ROI on that. And so those two things have been mashed together. And that started 20 odd years ago. And now most people, we're in a place that has a brilliant marketing and science university course, undergraduate and postgraduate here at Royal Holloway. No problems there. I do happen to know that. But I'll take my money later, Alex. Here, they're turning out people who understand data, not just about creativity and marketing, right? That's that marriage between those two things. And if you just play our world forward, if any of you took any time to watch the Congressional Senate hearings with Mark Zuckerberg or with Google over the last 18 months about the use of data, right? Personal data, you don't have to be very eagle-eyed to see, apart from General Counsel that was sat next to Mark Zuckerberg's left-hand side, and to the CEO, I can't remember himself, of Google, at the left-hand side when they were answering their questions, lawyer, of course. The person sat behind both of them was the chief data officer. Both of those people, one at Google and one at Meta, both come from this industry. Originally from the insights industry, maybe 20 years ago. I'm not suggesting that they were writing surveys, but they come from this industry understanding data, right? And so that's just an evolution. It's transformation, but it shouldn't be considered painful. I think that's, and now everyone's going to go back and look at the thing. They're there, literally one seat behind, just so that the General Counsel can lean back and get word in the ear to say, was that the right thing we were doing? Am I stating that correctly? One more time, so that Mr. Zuckerberg can talk in front of the Senate. So I think we have the ability to be very important in the way that things are happening. And I think we just have to embrace it and fail fast, hopefully, in some things, but actually, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's kind of there's still a lot of goodness in there, but just embrace the other stuff as well. And so the very first question you asked, AJ, was, I think researcher to boardroom or data. So if you think about that, well, I'd suggest we're there, right? Because if the chief data officer of two of the world's largest companies, the chief data officers of the two, are sat in probably some of the most important hearings of those companies' lives, then I'd suggest that we're already there. And in the future of what we do as individuals, our companies, the consulting firms in our industry, that all just plays, I think, a very big part. And I think we should just encourage we should encourage the tech, because it clearly matters, but not take it to Jon's point, not take away the importance of guiding the tech with experience and people who have the ability to change those things. So I think we're there. Maybe just in the shadows a little bit rather than the front person, but I think that we are already there.
I completely agree. I think the most successful companies out there, startups and Meta and Google, as you say, they have cross-functional teams. They have insights, they have technology in the boardrooms. And I think even in the insights industry, it's getting so complex now with all the technologies, routers, everything that's happening, trying to understand all the issues. Why can't we deliver data quality, all those things? You need to have that competence up at the highest level at the companies to really make guided decisions on strategies and so on. So if you don't have that and just have similar type people, white males, 50 years old, sitting there and taking decisions, you will take biased decisions, right? And you won't be a successful company. You need to use data, but also have a very mixed team, diverse ideally as well, to get all inputs from all types of people, but also competences.
Yeah. Okay, look, okay. I was going to about say, you were the first hand I saw.
One of the things I'm observing at the moment is with the AI, everybody's getting very excited. That's the first thing. But I think it's going to pass very quickly in the sense that it will just become like the conversion from fax to email. It just becomes part of business. But what I think is changing massively is what I observe is the person who is receiving, we provide customer feedback, that type of thing. The person who is receiving that at the moment is a facilitator. They accept the information and they do something with it within their business. I think what's going to happen is that person is become a data architect, just picking up on what you're saying. And that person is going to become very, 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 very important. And their position will become so critical to the future of all these businesses that it will pull everybody in this industry with them. And that role will become so much more important. So I think we can forget the AI bit. That's just where we are today, and it's the buzzword. But it's what you can do with it. But as John, you were just saying, I think the technology has to be managed. You have to have an understanding where the information is coming from. You have to know, is it reliable? Then we look at what's happening with Zappi and PepsiCo. They're pulling all that information together. And that is going to be the transformational thing in the next 10 years, because the technology will change. In 2 years' time, it will be different, it'll be better, or we hope it will. And we'll be on to the next generation of something. But it's what the people can do with it is going to be really, really important.
I think it's then also where that function sits, whether it actually sits, that data function sits within the technology department, as I think you often find within large corporates, or whether it actually sits within the insights function, which, I think then it's where that power is. Yeah, I think there is, right, exactly, and I think that's in play right now. Where the insights team want to hold on to that, obviously, and then the technology team see that as equally as their domain. I think that's going to be an interesting one to play out, because I think traditionally insights has been maybe seen as slightly, for want of a better word, softer inside large corporates, where technology has more sway.
I love that you say that AI is only a technology, right? And I'm allergic to when you say that you're an AI company or you're something. I want to know the problem that you're solving. Right. And I'm working a lot with startups, and they're presenting themselves. I just joined as a mentor in a blockchain and AI incubator. And they're pitching their different business ideas and so on. And they're going, yeah, we're blockchain first or AI first or something like that. And I don't care about that. I want to know what problem are you solving for your customer. And are you using AI or blockchain or something like that to do it? Great. I don't care about that. It's the problem that you're solving, and what's the value of that? And I think also one company which I'm advising is in marketing. Essentially, they're generating newsletters through Gen AI, which which is a really cool tool. And they're trying to promote themselves to different brands out there. And they're getting directed to the chief AI officer of those companies because the marketing department don't really know what to do with them because they can't work with a company like that, and then they end up somewhere else, someone that doesn't really have any marketing knowledge. But they should be talking to the CMO and implement their tools with the CMO. But that will probably happen in the next couple of years, that the companies will mature and everyone will start using AI in all their different departments and not really think about AI.
So I just wonder whether there's a higher reluctance to change in our industry than any other industry. Like, we're still using really old tech. Like, some people are still using quantum, the SPSS, etc. And that's the barrier.
Yeah.
That's the barrier that's going to stop us moving. I present to some people and they're like, but I'll have to lose all my knowledge I have of SPSS. And it's just like, yes. And so they don't want to. And they've got 15 years of using it. They've built up their little empire and they don't want to change. And I think it's like embedded within a researcher that you don't want to change anything because then you'll introduce a new bias, potentially. And that's just the way they think.
I've experienced that a lot as well on my sort of journey building Ayda. I think there's a reluctance to change. There's a suspicion of new. There's a love for the craft. There's very much a love for the craft. And outside of that, it's like, all right, thanks, which makes it sort of the pace of change quite glacial. Whereas if I was, I know, to repurpose what I did and put it in UX and in product development, you know, I've already seen businesses there absolutely, you know, the groundswell, off they go, you know. It's like there's a love of new tech, there's a love of new processes, let's experiment, let's try, you know, whereas pen and paper, please, over here a little bit, you know?
I mean, at the beginning of our conference, Steve from Zappi was telling the case study about Pepsi, and you know, I was literally feeling quite stressed about that because I just couldn't imagine how I had to manage such a project with such change. But it seems that at Pepsi, they said, this is what we're doing, and everybody, liked or not like it, conformed into making it happen. Well, in market research operations, that's really difficult. So why? And you think it might be because researchers are frightened of creating biases. I don't know. Is there other reasons why we struggle as an industry to change?
I think you've got two forces at play here, and it's really easy to see because if anyone's read a survey in the last few days, at the very start of that survey, undoubtedly it says, please take your time, consider your answers, and think carefully before you make any decisions. Almost all surveys say some version of that or another. And that's one side of the industry. That's the people in the industry who have that methodology, research background. And when I say that you've got two forces at work here, because technologists, unfortunately, don't have that same gene. It's run fast, fail, break, run fast, fail, break, and hopefully win. And so when you hit those two things together, you need all of that, the goodness that comes from, you know, I've written a number of white papers with Royal Holloway and some of the people here, and they are torturous, quite frankly, torturous. Like, you'd spend 3, 6, 9, 12 months writing one white paper, whereas my team, whilst I was writing that white paper, had built 20 new products that would solve some of the white paper problems that we were trying to solve. So I think, and those worlds are colliding. I don't mean that they collide always in a bad way, but it's just hard for those to sometimes understand which pieces do we take from left-hand side and which pieces do we take from the right-hand side. And so I do believe that some of that inertia is because it is hard to always to change, you know, not try, you know, it's a big oil tanker, this industry. It's been around for a long time and people understand how some of the methodologies work. And I'm not so sure that people always think that some of those new methodologies are as good as the old ones, and so that's something to change. It's very simple as well. You know, so our business is a behavioural data business, and we actually don't do surveys. We collect the what data so that other people can ask the why data. And so you can run really hard at what, because it is the thing. It's the thing they did. They bought a TV on Amazon. You can see it. They ordered an Uber, taxi to their door. All of those things you can see. What you can't see is why, and that does take so that you don't get biased, so you don't get incorrect information as to why they took that taxi. Is it just their regular taxi? Is it whatever else it might? Was a baby born, etc., etc. You have to ask the why, but you have to ask the why so you don't get the. And so, it's not breaking those things. It's just trying to learn how to use those. And I do think there's a reason. Someone gave me this stat a long time ago. I've never really looked into to see if it's true, but there are more doctors in the research industry than there are in the medical industry around the world. I don't know if that's quite true. It's a good stat, though, isn't it? Someone should go into the research stat, I'm sure. But because there are more PhDs in market research and insights, maybe that's over the years. But that means time. That's time and patience to get that right outcome. Computer scientists often do a 3-year course, call themselves a genius, and then run hard at it. And so I think that it's a balance of those two things. And I think in the companies where they've got good both parts of both those things are where they win. So I don't think it's just a colliding of different types of views.
I can answer that quite literally, in that I specialise in personality measurement, and I've actually profiled different industries for their collective personalities, and they do. An accountant does have a very distinctive personality from someone that works in advertising, and market researchers do. I mean, I don't want to overgeneralise, but there's this what's known as prevention and promotion axis, regulatory focus. Promotion people, charge ahead, get on, don't worry about, making a mistake. And prevention-minded people are a lot more cautious, make sure they're proceeding in the right direction, don't want to make mistakes. Market research is definitely on that side, which I think, almost is self-evidently wary of change. So that is the answer, really. The nature of our job.
The answer.
Look, I want to cover 2 more topics in the next 20 minutes or so. So I'm going to move on. I know someone said forget AI, but I don't think we can. The conference has had a lot of focus on AI. Great paper, thought-provoking paper from Colin earlier. Jon yesterday on a great experiment. I agree, Oscar, that companies shouldn't be called AI companies. Sure, it's about the application of AI. But let's think about it. So my question to you all is, how big a transformation do we think the application of AI is going to be in our industry? Is it going to be an evolution, or is it going to be a revolution in the next 3 to 5 years? And will market research industry be for the better, for the worse, for it?
Complete and total, I think. I think it's just going to take over fast and be complete.
For the better or the worse?
I don't know.
Okay.
It was Bill Gates that said, don't overestimate what you can do in a year, but don't underestimate what will happen in 10 years. And I think that will happen. So things won't change overnight. Everyone is trying ChatGPT and synthetic panels out there, and they're trying to poke holes and everything. And technology is very young at the moment. It's in its adolescent stage, so it doesn't have any sort of form of consequence thinking and stuff like that. Things happen. But over time, it will mature and will become better and better, and we will start using applications of AI in more and more areas of our work to just be more efficient. Some things that wasn't possible before is possible suddenly. So I think it will transform a lot in 5-10 years' time, but we won't see the changes in a year's time.
With a few exceptions. So I'm not just suggesting market research. So brilliant piece of data from Deloitte in Zurich came out about a month ago. Chairman, CEO of Deloitte Zurich encouraged all employees, not just engineers, but every department, to use a generative AI tool as some part of their day. Deloitte trained them how to use the tools, how to think about prompts, how to write prompts. As we know, obviously that will change, and we'll get better over that. Deloitte Zurich posted a 24% increase in revenue this last year, and a 32% efficiency scale on the monitor that Deloitte measure themselves by, which is actually really good for their clients. Don't get me wrong, not necessarily on a huge level of consultancy firms, but I think those pieces of data are very powerful. They're pretty hard. I mean, and that is in a year. That's not 10 years. That's a group of people who didn't. Some of them had not even seen ChatGPT or Gemini or Bard or whatever it was that they were using at the time. And within 1 year, that is a pretty big swing. And and that, just to be clear, that percentage number is about 3 billion Swiss francs. That's not to be knocked at, and the board will definitely not be going backwards, I can assure you that. There's not too many people who will argue that was not a good idea. Now, was it all related to the use of Gen AI? Unclear. But I think they'd be pretty hard to go backwards. So I think everyone should just be playing with that, and I don't think it's departments. I think it's companies should be playing with that. It's not specific teams.
It runs across everything and not just market research, right? I think that's it. It's just general use in day to day. We'll make it business more efficient across the board, and then the impact in market research, the synthetics, the big pieces that could really transform our industry. I think it will take a little bit longer. I think that's how that shape might work, right? Exactly like you said, just the day-to-day, then the big pieces will come in within the next sort of decade as they get refined.
It's easy to do doomsday on the market research industry, but if you think about it in a purely sort of, I suppose, I keep on using the macroeconomic way, we'll now be able to access billions and billions and trillions of bits of information with the most incredibly sophisticated bits of technology to do that and analyze it. So, ergo, we're going to be able to produce so many more insights that we didn't know existed. And someone's got to be there to make sense of it all. And I just feel like we have got a potentially incredibly bright future in the research industry if we can get to grips with some of these technologies as quickly as possible, to sit at the centre of so many business organisations and really drive them forward, realising that insights, are the future of driving businesses essentially, because they can be gathered so efficiently, so quickly, so usefully, and that is what we do as an industry. I bet, I invest in our industry right now. Actually, that's my point.
So I completely agree with that. And in fact, actually, I think if you'd have asked any new graduate coming, do they want to sit and do SPSS for the next 10 years of their life, or do they want to play with new tech and get brilliant answers that power new types of companies, new thinking in companies? I 100% agree. I think this transformational change, everyone should just get up and have a little bit of fun with this thing, because actually I think that we, as an industry, and it depends on how you define this industry, SMR is kind of interesting in some respects because it talks about the total amount of money in this industry. And when you pull those things apart, there's quite a lot of big data consulting happening in that, whatever the number is now, $80, $90 billion. And I think that we should just embrace that and just say all of these companies have certain parts of their businesses that do have research and insights and data and synthetic data and technology and all of those things to provide the C-suite or governments with data that is very, very powerful if used properly, of course. But I think it's the sun's out. We've got Gen AI. Let's use it for the goodness that it can bring.
I promise. Sorry.
Can I just say something? As Jon was saying or indicating, a lot of the big agencies have already got training programs and medium-sized agencies and so on for staff using Gen AI for sure. Maybe some sort of versions of causal AI as well. So I think that's happening. We were talking, MRS conferences 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago about the power of data integration and the skill set that insight professionals have in terms of extracting meaning from data, becoming more, if you like, kind of, data curator, so pulling data in from all over the place. So I think that's undeniable. And I mean, my view, for what it's worth, is that it will take 3 to 5 years to see real change. It won't be at the end of this year, but it certainly won't take 10 years' time. My question for the panel is, do we think that that is seriously going to allow us to solve the major problem that the industry has had for the last 2 or 3 decades, which is the margin problem? So, are we going to become a 20% margin business as the consultancies, rather than a, depending on how you massage your figures, but essentially a 5% business industry? So, I mean, do you guys have a view on that?
I think
or will we cut our throats again? Or will we go? Sorry, or will
rule of
we?
40.
Sorry, or will we go back to? John is probably as old enough as well to remember this. A good few years ago, when we cut our own throats by, in a recession, cutting our prices and competing with each other so heavily on price. So that's, I suppose, a sort of an additional question. How can we avoid doing that? So how can we avoid giving away the benefits that AI might bring the industry?
Yeah, I think the answer is if we use all the efficiencies that we create with AI to actually create more value to our customers, right? And right now, where we are devaluing ourselves as an industry, and we're just delivering the data and then the PowerPoint and presenting that, and we're not doing any recommendations. The management consulting firms, they're actually going in there recommending how to change and transform their business based upon the data that you generate. And I think that's where market research can really step up, especially using these technologies and tools to really grow the value that we deliver to our customers. But if we're not doing that, we're just creating efficiencies and lowering prices, then no, that won't happen.
I think then that requires different, not different, but more of that talent to come into this industry, right? More of that kind of consulting, critical thinking, consultancy type person to be wooed into here rather than the Deloitte, PwC, etc., right? Which is quite a big ask, because otherwise the brain power goes there, and that's where the money will follow. I think
I've always struggled to understand why a research agency has never really successfully built a consulting arm to it, and whether it's because the consultants won't come into the research industry, or whether we don't have the kudos, or we don't charge enough. Maybe you have to charge silly prices, and then people will pay.
maybe. I mean, I struggle with that too, because it's all here.
Yeah,
it's
data, we know.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's also some of that talent already here. It's just not branded and sold and packaged in the same way, and therefore is not perceived to have the same value.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Right, we've got Katie.
I'd echo the positivity. I think there's so much opportunity in this industry right now, and I think something that we can take a look at, which is happening on the other side of our industry, our client side. I think the insights teams in client businesses that are really succeeding now are making best friends with the CMO, and they know that, and they're building that partnership because they're focused. The value we bring drives marketing. That's what it does. We need to package ourselves that way in all aspects of the industry. And that is what's going to give us the permission to build the technology, to own the data, to really drive that. Because we're right, there are other people who can do that. I think we have the brainpower to do it, but I think we let ourselves fall to the background sometimes. And I think we need to step up into that role and really understand what the CMO needs and get them to be our champion, and don't look at the technology team to do this, because they're making that decision, and we're at risk of them making that decision for us if we don't step into it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it goes beyond marketing. It goes into business at a broader level. I think in a way marketing is in some senses, I know that's traditionally where we're focused, it limits us, right? Because then you have pockets that happen in product development with UX, and they fight then to own that customer insight and to deliver that further up to the board. It's a race upwards,
It's true, but
really,
even
with
then-
who
even in our
owns the
round, we're not
data.
doing it. We should already be doing it with the CMO.
Right, right.
But yes, I agree. It should be even broader than that.
I think to bridge the question you had in the middle and what you've just said, I think there's two things that are, I use the internet thing, outside that I see, which has hurt the market research industry phenomenally. One, it delivers itself as a service-based industry. Nothing wrong with that, some pretty powerful service-based industries in other sectors. But it delivers itself almost entirely, apart from some of the big, the Kantars of this world, as a project-based industry.
Very true.
The advertising industry would fail on its arse in a heartbeat if it didn't have any retained clients. It would fail within 1 year. Martin Sorrell, the WPP, obviously not there anymore, WPPs, the Publicis, all of those things, which of course have research arms as well, but almost all of them would fail if they couldn't retain a client for at least 2 or 3 years, because the work that they do, building up through that period of time, has to have an ability to be grounded, embedded in, and therefore deliver on some of those things. And clients understand that. And the research industry, this was one of the scariest things I found when I entered it, which was, I have to do all of that for you this month, and then next month, and then you go away as a client, and then I have to go back to a zero, and I think that I'll give you the opposite of that. The VC world and tech, it used to love search industry. Didn't have any problem with them because they were big revenue generators. But now, if you don't say you're a SaaS company when you walk into a VC's office, then you haven't got a chance, right? You have to be a SaaS company because it's repeatable, recurring revenue. There's a middle ground of those things, right? There's nothing wrong, like I say, there's nothing wrong with being a service industry, but you have to have some ability to partner with your clients. And I think to your point about how do we do that in a research world, is that there have to be, I think, it's easy to say and hard to do, don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting it's a flick of a switch, but clients like Zappi and Pepsi have to get closer to each other, or that client and that company, technology or other, has to be closer. And you have to be able to work with that client to build up some of that relationship, because otherwise you're just dip in and dip out. And unfortunately, that's a really, really, and I think that yes, in answer to your question, we will be a 5% business forever, unless we solve that, because there's a reason that Deloitte take 20. It's mostly long term, not short term.
Yeah, but I think actually our industry does have big client account relationships. I mean, again, my background is big agency, but medium-sized agencies as well. We have account relationships with big corporates, and we're servicing them. Maybe an agency wouldn't typically service the whole of Pepsi, for example, in terms of all their insight needs, but they will take all of their, global brand program, or they will be doing MPD for them on a global basis. So we do that already, and those relationships do exist.
I mean,
and yet still
I see in the large agencies, if I'm honest, though. I mean, generally,
that's fair enough.
Has to do project work, project work, and that's a big part of this industry.
But I'm not sure the margin issue goes away when you've got an account-based relationship with a client of longer standing. I don't know what you think, John, but we're just not, we haven't managed to create the credibility to charge those margins that the consultancies get. And my experience of, GfK took a jump at creating a sort of consultancy arm a few years ago, and their problem was, and I can say this now that I'm no longer there, but their problem was that they needed credible people to kick it off, to kind of, gain credibility, credence. And then you're looking at big investments to do that. And I think maybe that's where research agencies become a little down at the bottom end of the axis that you were talking about, a bit too risk averse, I think.
I mean, economists studying any innovation development across an industry, I mean, it doesn't. the end result is the opposite of improving margins. It's reduced margin normally because you're producing more of it cheaper, and other people can compete and do it cheaper. So it does drive down. So it's not necessarily a prospect of just for this happening, it's going to improve margin. But there are some things, I think, working on the edges of that, where I think one-man band businesses in this industry are going to thrive because they can now do all that stuff that they might have taken like an assistant or someone to help do. It can all be automated. And so some of their services where people are actually being employed for their actual brains, not for anything else, those types of people can thrive. And if you can bottle that sort of structural approach and recognise that that is what people are buying as a brain, and able to do all sorts of different types of research, the businesses that can bottle that will do well too.
Right. I want that. We're always going to run out of time before we finish because there's so much good stuff to talk about. But there is one other topic I want to spend the last 7 or 8 minutes on. Another theme of the conference: fraudulent responses, poor quality surveys. It does seem as though the model of participant access seems broken, but it may be even fatal. Are we able to recover? If so, how do we recover? And is synthetic data going to come to our rescue?
I think market forces are already kicking in and saying, you know, we do need to do something to tackle it. And I think we got a lot of solutions emerging. AI, certainly in our business, is transforming how we, in the battle against fraud. I think we're doing, you know, we've got a lot more tools at our disposal. I think also those same tools that spot someone as fraudulent enables us to actually dynamically audit the quality of someone's responses, and we then have a different way we can incentivize people, and we can identify people who are fraudulent, but we can identify people who are really good, and we can pay them more and reward them for good responses. So I think in that respect, there are some opportunities. It's an undoubtable significant issue. But I do think we're at a little bit of a turning point with all the work that the Global Data Quality Initiative, led by all the different organisations, the MRS and the Insights Association and SMR, really pushing. It's become a big issue for our industry, and I think we're taking notice of it actually, and are making change.
Okay.
What do you think a reasonable amount of fraud is? Because realistically, in any system, there's got to be a tolerance, and you've got a certain level of progress, not perfection.
It's reasonable enough for a client spot someone who's fraudulent in their, in the data set to not expect to pay for that. I don't think there is a reasonable amount of fraud. There is, if it's a faulty product, a response that's not truthful, and therefore clients shouldn't be expected to pay for that. I think there are some blurring lines between the cause of if it's poor data because the survey's boring, that's on the client. If it's a fraudulent person, I don't think there is a reasonable level of it. It should be zero.
But is that a realistic expectation when you're talking about a business model with a margin sometimes as narrow as 1% to 2%? And I suppose there's the question of at what point do we get to, okay, I reach an open end in a quant survey and I just keyword match because I can't be arsed to answer it. All of the rest of that data is valid, but because of that open end, do you discount that individual? Like, how do you strike the balance?
I think
zero isn't a reasonable expectation.
I think to Jon's point, I think that inattentiveness is down to poor design, length of survey, all of that, and I think that's on us to get right. But an actual fraudulent person, someone who's trying to game the system, who is coming in multiple times, who is really shouldn't have screened in for that survey at all, should be wiped out, and there should be zero tolerance on that. There's two things that we're kind of conflating, right? One is fraud, and one is bad survey design or poor survey design and inattentiveness. And we can solve for both, but I think the poor survey design and inattentiveness is probably almost harder in some ways, because that's about
ensuring that everybody that writes and sends out surveys is adhering to a particular standard, and that's pretty hard with DIY approaches.
I think the question is, what should the aim be in terms of fraud? And the aim should always be zero.
Yes.
In reality, the achievement can never be zero. It's always, forever, survey fraud, whether it was in the days of face-to-face interviewing when we had interviewers making up surveys and so on. Every time you fix a problem, someone who's intent on committing fraud will find another way to game the system. So you're always trying to catch up,
Yeah.
but we should be aiming for zero fraud. I think you're right. I think data quality is a different issue, i.e. attentiveness or inattentiveness.
Yeah, but I think the aim is zero, and whether we achieve that is another thing, but
Yeah.
the tolerance should be zero.
I think it depends on where you measure in the value chain, right? So to end clients, the aim should be zero,
Yeah.
but there has to be some sort of acceptance within our industry because things will happen, new forms of fraud, but we are here to actually make sure that the data we collect and deliver to our customers is of a high quality, right? But it's a supplier that sells to another supplier, to an exchange, to a research company, and so on, and there's a lot of companies involved in that process. But I think it's a shared responsibility to make sure that we remove all the bad data, fraudulent data, inattentive data from the data that we deliver to the final customer, right? And right now it's been pushed very much to the research agency delivering that has to take a big blunt of that work to scrub all the data. And I think we're doing progress in getting better in the data that we deliver from suppliers, panel suppliers to research companies. But it's a huge responsibility to make sure that we catch it before it reaches the end customer.
It's interesting from Neil's presentation earlier that's sort of seen as a hygiene factor by the end customer, but in actual fact, it's like a sort of sort of pedaling fast underneath the water to sort of ensure that remains a hygiene factor and something that doesn't sort of surface up, bubble up, which is
End clients. Sat with CMO, chief data officers, the 10 largest FMCG companies over the last year. That's your problem.
Yeah.
It's the market research's problem. And that's just the way it is. So you've got another problem, which is stood up at SMR about 5 years ago, and I said that this is the most egregious market in the world to its end customer. And I got the same look I'm getting right now. If you pay someone an average in the Western world 7 cents to get an answer to a very important question that changes the business decision of the company, we should be ashamed of ourselves. And the reason is we've got too many people in the value chain because we've put technology in there that doesn't all need to be there. And the old days of, don't get me wrong, I'm not harking back to the old days of meeting a person in the street, realising what they are and asking them a question on a clipboard, right or wrong, was the quickest way to give the £5 Marks and Spencer's voucher for 15 minutes of their time, which was a good equation of paying for the answers that you needed. We put technology in the middle there, and weirdly, technology takes a margin. 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%. And all of a sudden, you started with a client who thought they were paying £5 to a user, and they're paying 7 cents.
Do you think that's part of why we struggle to get
Correct.
value for the
I don't just think it, I know it 100% of the time. So I can tell two very simple data points. We have our own panel, completely proprietary. I can see who's on every other panel because I actually get their behavioural data, so I actually know which other apps they have from every other panel as well. And occasionally, just for fun, I ask them survey questions. Have you used Coinbase? I like this one specifically because Coinbase is only available in an app. You can't trade on Coinbase, the Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency platform, on the web. It doesn't allow that. So therefore, you have to have the app on that device. And if I can see the app, then I know you have. And then, yet, in 100 people, I can ask that question, and 80% of those people will say yes, and only 20% of those people have the app. Now, it's really simple, simple down. Do a few other things, but a few other things. The Coinbase is my favourite because it's really simple to see. And do you know what? We do pay for the problem. Every task that I used to get is somewhere between £3 and £5. But it's behavioural data, so everyone says that should be more expensive because it's not. I'm not sure that is. What's the difference between behavioural data and claims data? I'd rather have the claim data with the same quality as the behavioural data. Now I've got brilliant data on both sides of the fence. So I still claim this is, unfortunately, the world's most egregious industry to the end consumer.
And what a good point to end. I promised Jerome 10 minutes to finish the conference. He's got 7. But can I please join me in thanking Owen, Oscar, Jon, and Shifra.